Hi my dear friends, welcome back to our lighting workshop. My name is Hussein Meshaikhi and I hope that you are all doing well wherever you are. In this session we're going to focus on lighting this scene, which has a black theme or a black style, which is a very popular one. But before I start getting into that, a lot of people ask me, do I generally spend a lot of time on these types of renders or the ones that I showed you before in terms of detail or quality? And the answer is that for real life projects that get offered to me, I don't. And I usually spend a lot less time, and that's gonna suffice. But for my portfolio and for the stuff that I want to upload on social media, I do take my time with it, and I just care a lot about the quality and the time that I spend on it, because it's ultimately these renders or my portfolio that is getting me all the attention and real life project proposals that I get. So I recommend you would do these types of high quality renders once a month or twice a month, even if you are busy with a lot of real life projects. So let's start working on this scene. I'm gonna start by adding a camera here. Okay, I press C on my keyboard, go to my camera's view. Since the camera's outside, we have to make some changes here. We have to enable clipping. So let's go to the detail panel of the camera and check out the parameters. So film gates 36, focal length 35, and shutter speed 50, f number is 8, and ISO is 100. Okay, so everything seems perfect, and we have to go down and enable clipping here. Okay, so we need 2 clipping panes. Enable clipping and adjust the near and far pane like we used to in the previous session. Let me just move my camera too, so I'm gonna put it in the center and tilt it like so that we would have a more straight view. Okay, this looks better. And now we can go to the render setup and do some stuff there. So if we go to the render setup, I'm gonna start with the size. The size seems fine. I'm gonna put it on radiance map and light cache, ambient occlusion enabled, and preset on very low. Let's go to V-Ray, put it on the progressive type for my render, and everything else seems fine. So we can start adding some lights to this scene. Okay, so let's see, we have a window here on the left, we have a chandelier up there, and like I told you before, don't create a scene where you have a pitch dark in the outside and it's just nighttime and you create a lot of artificial lights. Always have some light coming in from the outside. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add a V-Ray light, put the type on dome, put the dome light outside. Doesn't really matter where because it's not going to make any difference. Then I'm going to click on this no map button, and I'm going to add the HDRI image that we've used previously. It's called the graffiti tower. I'm going to select it. Okay, now that's ready. And since my f number is 8, I already know that I gotta start with a multiplier of 30, and we'll take things from there, and these numbers just come by experience. Okay, so let me slightly adjust my angle. Okay, this seems to be fine, and I'm gonna move the chandelier down a little. Let me see how long it goes. Okay, I'm gonna move this slightly towards the bed a little bit. Okay, there, that's better. And now everything seems to be ready for our first test render. So I'm gonna take one, and we can already see that there is some light coming in, and we have this material for the back of the wall, which we'll talk about later. But we have some light coming in, and it's giving us a nice looking render already, but we can just tweak it and make it more attractive using the frame buffer tools that we have. So I'm going to add exposure from this list, and I'm going to increase the exposure, and you can see that our render becomes brighter and nicer looking. And I can just use the highlight burn. If we have any type of highlight burn anywhere, I can just move the slider to the left and get rid of it. And for the contrast, I'm going to add a contrast curve, and I gotta be careful with it. I gotta do it in a really subtle way because the scene is already kind of dark, and if you don't take your time with this curve, it's gonna ruin the render. So let me just put it back there and move it a little bit, and then I'm gonna use this lever here. Okay, that seems better. Okay, that's beautiful. Let's see if we can just tweak it even more. All right, that's good. Okay, So I'm gonna add a filmic tone map next and see what that gives us. Okay, it's making our scene darker, so I'm gonna decrease this intensity number to 0.8. All right, that's better. And let's just increase the exposure too. Just slightly increase the exposure. Yeah, it's nice. And this plant seems to be levitating, so we're gonna take care of that. And let's see what else we have here. No issues here. Okay, so let me just double check all these different filters and change the contrast curve slightly. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with this. Alright, now that we have this nice looking base render, it's time to add some additional lights and improve this render. So I'm going to start by adding some hidden lights to the ceiling, maybe in these areas, and then we'll just take things from there. Okay, let's go ahead and do this. So I'm going to select the ceiling, isolate it, and I'm going to enable auto grid so that it will be easier to do this. And then I'm going to add a V-ray light with the type of plane, okay, to the side, a narrow one, a narrow rectangle, and I'm gonna rotate it so that it would just face that way. And I'm gonna create instance copies of this and put them for each side. Okay, we're gonna create instance copies because we want to use the same settings and parameters for all, and we can easily fix the scale if need be. So for example, for this one, I can just make it smaller, change the scale, and it's not going to affect the others. Create another instance copy of this and put it to the other side like previously. Okay, so place this here, create another one, and use it for the last side. Okay, let me just rotate it, put it there. Okay, and I need to change the scale, make it smaller. Okay, the ceiling is ready now. Let's go back and take a render and see what we get. By the way, we're not going to use a white looking light because that's not going to be attractive at all. In this scene, it's already cold, so I would need to change the color mode to temperature and add some warmth to my light. That's what I'm going to do next. And I think the multiplier is fine. So let's just change the color mode to temperature, use 3200, make it warmer. Okay, it's more yellow now. And I think the intensity is fine, so I'm not going to change the multiplier, but I'm going to change the directional of this light later on. So let's see what else we can do here. I think I don't quite like the yellow color of this light, so I'm gonna go to my hue and saturation filter, and I'm gonna decrease the saturation to get rid of some of that yellow. Okay, make it less saturated. Okay, so you can see the difference now. It's not as yellow, and I like this new one better. So now that we have taken care of the hidden lights in the ceiling, we can just use a hidden light behind the bed. So I'm gonna make a copy of one of these lights. This time I don't need to use an instance copy because we may need to change different setting and parameters for this one. So I'm gonna create a simple copy, put it back there. Let me just fix the position, adjust the rotation and everything. So it needs to be back here, and I'm gonna tilt it like that. Let's see, that's okay. So let's just take a render with this new light added. Each time we add something new to our scene, we need to take a test render and see how that works. Next, I'm going to take care of the direction or directional aspect of that light for the ceiling, but let's just take care of this light behind the bed first. It seems fine, and you can see that it has given us some depth and looks good. Actually looks really good. I think the only thing that I'm going to do to adjust this light behind the bed is to just decrease the multiplier a little, maybe use a smaller value like 10 because we don't want it to be as intense as the one in the ceiling. And some of the shadows that we get around that light may look kind of unnatural because we have used a displacement map for the material behind the bed. So to avoid that, I would want to use a less intense light. Okay, alright, so far we've created this beautiful scene. Now let's take care of the directional issue of these lights in the ceiling. I'm gonna select one and I'm gonna put the preview on always. Then I'm going to change the scope of this directional light, and I'm gonna make it more focused. make the scope more narrow. And after I do that, I probably would get a more focused and more intense light, and then I would have to decrease the multiplier. But let's just see it first. Okay, so we kind of limited the scope, and now we need to take care of this intense light. I'm going to decrease the multiplier to 20. Let's see. Okay, it seems better now, and looks good. All right, so what's next? Next we have this chandelier up here that we need to add some lights to. So let's see what we have to do. I'm going to select it first. Let's just look at it up close. Let's see what kind of steps we have to take to light this one. So this chandelier has a fairly complex shape. It has a lot of details. It has a lot of flowers. And if you wanted to use the same method that we used with the previous chandeliers, we would have to add a lot of little very light spheres inside these flowers, which would be a lot of work and it wouldn't make sense. It would be just really a mess. So what else can we do? We can simply change the material that has been used for this chandelier into a V-Ray light MTL. So let me just show you. This is a simple V-Ray MTL that has been used for this chandelier. I can replace it with a V-Ray light MTL. Look. V-Ray light MTL, this one, and I can simply use this material to create lights for this chandelier. Okay, that's what we're going to do. But let me just give you a little demonstration first. So I'm going to create a simple object here, maybe a cylinder. Let me just create that, and I'm going to apply this V-Ray light MTL to it so that you can see how it works. Let's just apply it to this object, and we can just light it very easily. Okay, it has a lot of parameters that we can just work with. Let's just take a render and see how it looks. Now let me add this, that using a V-Ray light MTL usually comes with a downside, and that downside is that it creates a lot of noise for us. So we gotta use it cautiously, okay? I think in order to show you how this V-Ray light MTL works more clearly, I gotta increase the intensity of this light. So that's what I'm going to do next. Let me just select it and change this number from 1 to 50, and you can see it better now. You have this really light cylinder, and it has this glare or bloom around it, and we can just toggle this bloom on or off with this lens effects filter that we have in the frame buffer. Okay, and we can just use this enable bloom and glare down here and change the opacity for it, make it more or less intense. And this will affect all the other lights that have bloom or glare. So check out the window on the left, and you can see as I'm moving this slider, it will affect the glare that we have in the left window as well. Is how we can use a V-Ray MTL, and we can just tweak it with these parameters, and we can also add an image. Okay, so you can imagine a TV. Okay, so that has a material for the screen, and similarly we can just use an image and use that image as a map for the light. Okay, so I'm gonna apply this material. I'm gonna choose the same color white, and I'm gonna load a V-Ray bitmap, the same 4K image that we use for our HDRI image, and now it's gonna be used as a map for the scattering of the light in this V-Ray light MTL. Okay, so I'm gonna stop this render. I think you got the idea, and let me just delete this. Let's just go ahead and work with this chandelier. So this chandelier has been created with a couple of materials. I'm gonna use the color picker here to find out what materials have been used. Okay, I'm gonna click on this because we need the light bulb. It's one of these 4. So it has some gold in it, it has some other materials, and I'm gonna find the one that has been used for the light bulb. It's this one. Okay, let me just change the color to make sure. So let me just check the chandelier for these black spots. Right, so this was the material, and we can just replace it with a V-Ray light MTL very easily. I'm gonna click on this, and this is the material. I'm gonna click on V-Ray MTL. I'm gonna replace it with a V-Ray light MTL, and I'm gonna use a warm color for it like this. I'm gonna use a big number like 1200 for the multiplier. And now let's take a render with these parameters and see what kind of lights we get for the chandelier. So this is our render, and it looks fine. It's beautiful, but I want to change the hue slightly. I want to change this yellow shade that we have here and make it more of an orange color. Okay, so combined with black, it's gonna give us an artsy vibe. Okay, so I'm gonna keep this, and overall I'm happy with the chandelier lights that we got. And don't worry about these orange spots. Okay, so we have multiple ways of taking care of this. We can use the light mix at the end of our work, or we can just take different renders for the lighting and save each one inside Photoshop as layers, and control the intensity of all of our lights and take care of light leaks like that very easily. Just remember that if you wanted to use the light mix method, make sure that you put the engine on brute force. Okay, so let me just change the hue again slightly. I'm gonna make it less orange by moving it to the right a little, and that's better. Next, I can just add some light coming from the chandelier on the bed sheets, but I don't really recommend doing that, but I'm gonna show it to you anyway so that you can just make your own decision. So I'm gonna add a rear light. I'm gonna put the type on plain, and I'm just gonna use this size. Let me just put it up there from the top view in the middle, move it up, and I think here is fine, but we can just move it down if we need to. So let's just start out with that placement, and I'm not going to change the temperature. 3200 is going to do just fine. Let's just unhide all and take a render and see what we get. Okay, so if I did not like this one, I'm gonna move the light slightly down. Just make sure that you make it invisible. We don't want to see the source of light. Let's just wait this out and see what kind of light we get on our bed sheets. Let's see if it affects the light around the chandelier. If that happens, I'm gonna have to move it down. So it's not that bad, it looks okay, but I'm gonna move it down anyway to see how that changes things. So I'm gonna move it down. Okay, and let's just see this one too. And I think I gotta decrease the multiplier. Let's use 10. Okay, so that it's less intense. I think it's gonna give us a better result there. That's what I was looking for. It's a lot better now. And let me just change the saturation a little bit, decrease it, and move the hue to the right so that it's less orange again. And overall it's just beautiful, it's just gorgeous. Okay, so let's check out the exposure, and I'm gonna increase the exposure as well, and I'm pretty happy with this look. Okay, it's fantastic in my opinion, it's great. So I think it's time for a final render. I'm gonna go to the render setup. For output size, for width, I'm gonna put like 3500, really big. Okay, and all the other settings are gonna be the same. I'm gonna have V-Ray denoiser as an element that I have included in this render, and I'm gonna edit the video so that we can see the final result there. So this render got finished, it's okay, but I'm gonna take another one, this time with the brute force method. Okay, so this one was on irradiance map. I'm gonna change it to brute force so that we can just add light mix here, and then at the end of the render we can just control the lights with the light mix. And I'm gonna use a smaller number for noise threshold so that we would get rid of some of the noise, 0.001, and I'm gonna let this render finish, and we can just come back and tweak the lights. Alright, this render just got finished, and you can see from the outset that it just looks better than the previous one. We got rid of some of the light leaks that we had on the bed, and everything looks cleaner, and we have a lot less noise this time with this render. I'm pretty happy with everything. Just the texture here looks a little bit faded out, and maybe I can just work on the texture so that it can just pop out more, and that's not for now. Let's just focus on some of the lights. So I'm gonna go to my light mix, and I can just disable all the lights and just turn them on one by one. So this is the light, the dome light that we have outside, and next we can just turn on the other lights. So the second one is the hidden lights for the ceiling, and we can just tweak any of these lights that we want based on the scenario that we want to have. Okay, and you can save each one of these renders separately and just combine them together to create a video inside Camtasia Studio, for example. And you can do a lot of things in terms of content creation with the light mix. Okay, let's change the intensity of some of these lights. So I'm going to start with the chandelier. I'm going to use 0.5 and reduce the intensity of this light. And let's say I want to create a nighttime scenario. I can easily do that by changing the light that we have outside, the dome light. I'm going to reduce the intensity to 0.2, and I'm going to change the color to something like blue. Okay, maybe this. And I can easily make it appear as it's at night, and I can just play with this light intensity until I get what I want. And it's just beautiful, the contrast, the colors. And since it's at night and it's kind of darker, I can change the light for the chandelier, make it more bright. Okay, maybe 3. and there. This way we achieve some kind of balance, okay? And basically, I suggest that you take your time with the light mix, and you can create as many scenarios as you want, different times of the day, evening, night, and you can just change the light in your atmosphere inside the room. And if you observe the right principles and aim for balance, you would just get fantastic results each time, okay? So for example, I'm gonna increase the exposure now. You can see how beautiful this looks. And overall, if I wanted to have a brighter atmosphere inside this room, I can just go back to my contrast curve and work with that, make it brighter that way, and I still keep the contrast, okay? Now that I changed the contrast curve, I need to go back to my light mix and decrease some of these multipliers so that it's less intense, okay? So each time you change something, you gotta observe how it affects everything else and make sure that you make the right modifications. And like I said before, we can create as many scenarios as we want with the help of light mix, okay? By the way, if you wanted to revert these numbers back to their default value, it's just so easy. You can just right click on these little arrows and it would just put them back to their default value. Okay, so let me just take care of some of these colors. It became so white, so I'm gonna have to manually make it darker. So Control Z doesn't work for me right now, so let me just try to make this darker manually with this slider. Okay, good. And everything looks fine. The materials are popping out and it's just beautiful. Look at the material on the wall, the carpet, everything is just standing out, and it's just a great render. So I'm going to stop this render. I'm going to remove the light mix and add it again so that it doesn't give us any problems in the future. Okay, and let's just move on. What else can we do? Well, we can even add more lights, more additional lights in the ceiling. And this time I'm going to add some IES lights so that we learn about them as well. Very simple to work with. They're the same halogen lights that we worked with before. I'm going to create V-Ray IES, which is basically, like I said, the halogen lights that we worked with before. I'm going to create one, and I'm going to create multiple copies of it and put it to the side. I'm going to select it, and I'm going to create 2 more copies of it. And let's just use 2. Okay, and I'm going to select all of them and make another copy for the other side of the ceiling. Okay, so I'm gonna make the copy, put them on the left. It would be better if I use instance copy, so I'm gonna do the whole process from the start. This time put it on instance because we want to use the same setting for all of them. That's why I would want to use the instance copy method. Okay, and they are ready now. We can just go to the render setup and change some setting there because we want to take test renders again. So I'm gonna put the engine on irradiance map, and I'm gonna change the noise threshold back to 0.01. Okay, so we are ready to take another render and see how these IES lights look like on our ceiling. Basically, I think they will look like spots, like some white spots on the ceiling. Let's take our test render and we can just tweak the render after it's done. I'm going to start with the exposure. I think I would need to change the exposure and also the contrast curve. Okay, so because we are working on the night scenario, we tweaked the contrast curve a lot, so I'm going to delete it altogether, add another one. I'm going to change the exposure to, okay, let's just add another contrast curve, and I'm going to tweak it like I did before, get this lever and move it up. That seems better. And these are our IES lights. And they kind of work like a simple sphere light, and we can see their effect on the ceiling, but I'm going to add another camera on the side so that we could see them in action better. Okay, so I'm going to add another V-Ray physical camera, put it to the left side. Since the camera is inside, we won't need the clipping, so I'm going to disable the clipping. And now let me just make some final adjustments for the placement of these IES lights so that we can just see them better and learn about them a little bit. Okay, so let me just move this to the right there, and let's go to camera number 2 and take our test render and check out the result. So what's interesting about using IES lights is that we kind of can determine what type of shape or direction we want to have with them. I mean, we have some control over that. So let me just show you with an example. Let's say we want to have some kind of IES lights on one of these walls. Okay, so we have the directional aspect of that light, and we also have the source of light. So this is the directional. I'm gonna put it on the wall, but I want the source of light to have some distance from the wall. Okay, so it's gotta be placed like this with some distance from the wall. This is the best way to get the type of light that I want with that IES light. Okay, so let's just get a render and see what that gives us. And by the way, the parameters that we have for the IES lights is just not really important to us. The only thing that we work with is the intensity, and it doesn't really make sense to change the rest because we're always going to use an IES map, and I'm going to show you in a second. So if you click on this button, you can just select any type of IES file that you want. I've included 30 for you, so you can just select any of them that you want. Okay, so let me just show you what I mean. We have 3 different shapes, 3 different patterns for these IES lights, and based on what you are after, you can just select any of them and just easily use them. So you don't really need to change any of the, let's say, a scale or the shape of these lights, because you have access to so many, and you can just download any other IES file that you want from the internet as well. So let's just select 18. Okay, and let's see how that looks like on our wall. Okay, and we can just increase the intensity, the only parameter that is useful to us, so that you can just see it better. Okay, it's this shape. I'm gonna put, let's say, 1200, maybe 2200, 3200. Okay, and you can see it better now. It's interesting, but it's not my favorite choice of light. I usually get things done by the help of a disc light, but sometimes there's a use case for it and we have to use it, and that's the only time that I would use an IES light. Like I said before, I always prefer to use a disc light. So I understand that sometimes it's really difficult to use a disc light or any other type of V-Ray light to achieve a certain shape of light, but again, unless I absolutely have to use an IES light, I won't use it. And I've seen people just spam their walls with these IES lights, numerous IES lights on one wall, and it's just terrible, and I recommend you to not do that. So let me show you what I want to do. So I'm going to select one of these IES lights, and I'm going to click on select similar, because that's going to select all of them, and I'm going to delete them all together. Okay, all of them have been selected. I'm going to delete them, and I'm going to replace them with disc lights. Okay, so I'm going to create a V-Ray light here, and I'm going to choose the type of disc for it, and I'm going to add it here. Let's go to the top view. I won't need auto grid. Okay, I'm gonna create a disc light here, that size. I'm gonna create an instance copy, maybe 2 more. Okay, and I'm gonna put them here. I'm gonna select all of them, make a copy, put the other 3 down here for the other side of the room, and now all of them are instance copies. Let's go to camera number 1. Let me just change the preview for these lights. Okay, so I'm gonna put the preview on selected. We won't need to see the direction of them just yet. It just messes up our working space by cluttering it with all of these lines and shapes. Let me just put the preview for this other one on selected again, and I'm gonna change the multiplier to maybe 3. Let me change the preview to never. Okay, now it's just less crowded here. I'm gonna select it, put it up there. Okay, it's easier now. They're easier to move around. Up there is fine. And if you wanted to, you could just add some really simple halogen objects or 3D models up there for these disc lights, but it won't be necessary. So let's just take a render and see how they look like up there. Put the preview on selected again, and let me just change the directional. That seems like a good height, and I'm gonna put the color mode on temperature, use a temperature like 3200. You know what, maybe 4500, not that warm. Okay, we don't need it to be that yellow. Let's take a render and see how they look like. And from what I can see, we have this nice little glare because in lens effects we have bloom and glare enabled. Okay, and it looks good actually. I'm gonna keep it that way. Let me just change the radius, make it a little bit smaller, and I'm gonna test out 120 for the multiplier, see how that looks like. So we can always create a nice light for our environment by using this kind of disc lights, and our render kind of looks artistic and really nice. So let me just change the intensity, make it a little bit less intense, and we can always change everything, change all of these parameters with the light mix at the end of our work. So I'm pretty happy with the result that we got. It looks really good. So I'm going to change the multiplier to 300. Let's just test that out too. And it just looks really artistic and really nice actually. So that looks good. And we can just change the size a little bit. I think if we were to make the size of these lights a little bit smaller, it would look even better. And at the end I'll probably turn them off, but for now they just look great. Okay, so if we wanted to use them, they look absolutely fine here. So let me just change the angle for camera number 2. I'm gonna put it to the side this time, and I'm gonna capture another beautiful shot of this bed and the window. Okay, let me just come here, and I want this shot to be kind of wider, so I'm gonna zoom in a little. Okay, so let's just fine tune and adjust the angle of this shot. Okay, let's see. Looks great. And the material kind of looks weird up here, and we can just spend some time working on it in Photoshop and just changing the displacement if you wanted to, but I don't want to get into that right now because it's just material and just out of the scope of this course. However, what I can do is just select it and scale it like so, and just move those displacement up there, and it's gonna look different now. This time it's gonna look a little different, and you can do the same thing. You can just use the same scene and change the wall, and use any type of wall that you want, and just change this scene to make it your own and use any type of wall that you want. And that's what I recommend you to do. Use the same scene, use the same materials if you want to, but you can just change them anytime and just create your own scene and use the same principles, and you get just beautiful results. And this time for this render, we have less light coming in, and more of the light is coming from the lights that we have placed inside this room. Okay, so let's just take another render and see if what we did with the scaling of that back wall worked. And in the meantime, make sure that the materials that you create and use and the UVs that you have used for those materials are really high quality, because there are big signs of whether or not you're an amateur or not, and that's a really important topic that we will cover in our material workshop. So with this render, I think the back wall kind of got better, and if you wanted to spend more time with it, we could just take it inside Photoshop and change that texture and modify the displacement map of that back wall. Okay, but that's not what we're going to do. We're going to focus on lighting, so I'm going to go to camera number 1's view and take a render from that angle. And by the way, modeling this scene took me like 5 hours, and I recommend you to do this type of scene each month. Okay, at least work on one scene, model it yourself, and do the lighting and everything, and create renders like this, really high quality renders, and put them on your portfolio, because these are the types of renders that will get you customers and real life projects. Alright, so let me just do one last thing before we finish this session. I'm gonna add another light. This time I'm gonna create an object first. I'm gonna create a circle. Okay, so let me just hide this and hide this ceiling and the wall. Okay, I'm gonna create a circle here first. Let's just enable auto grid so that everything's easier. A circle of this size, I'm gonna put it down here, and I'm going to make it adaptive. So let me just enable adaptive here, and I'm gonna add a sweep modifier to it like so. And I'm gonna choose cylinder from this list. Okay, it's too thick. I'm gonna decrease the radius to 1. Okay, it's a lot better now. Let's see it from this angle. Go to camera number 1. Maybe it would be better if we scale it up a little, make it bigger. Let's just make it a little bit bigger by increasing the radius. And I'm going to do something interesting. I'm gonna assign a plastic material to it, and I'm gonna choose plastic here from this list. I'm gonna give a white color to it, and now I'm going to create a copy of this circle. Okay, and I'm gonna put this on copy, change the radius to 0.2 so that it's just smaller. I'm gonna move it inside, a little bit inside, okay, so that it just sticks out of the. Now I'm going to add a rear light. I'm gonna put it to the side here. I'm gonna put the type on mesh, it's important. Now in the modifier, I use this pick mesh tool to select the smaller or the narrower circle, okay. And next I'm going to put the temperature on 3200 so that it gives us a warm color. All right, and I'm gonna use this as a decorative light to add some contrast to my scene. So I'm gonna go inside camera number 1 and take a render. Let's see what kind of contrast this gives us. Okay, so it's looking pretty good. I think I need to increase the multiplier so that it just stands out more, maybe 200. Okay, beautiful. And you can see how attractive that looks. It's a decorative light. It adds some contrast to the right side of my render and just looks beautiful. And the point I'm trying to make with this object is that you can just create any object that you want with your creativity and just try to light it as a decorative object, and there's no really limitation here, okay? And by the way, we're not gonna see these light leaks when we use the brute force method for our final render, okay? So don't worry about them. We're gonna get rid of them when we use the brute force method for our render. Alright, so that's the end of this session. And by the way, if I wanted to take one final render, I'll probably turn off some of these lights so that our scene would become a little bit simpler in terms of lighting. I'll probably turn off the chandelier or the hidden ceiling lights, okay? And our scene looks great with or without those lights. All right, now for your practice, I recommend you that you start with this scene, but don't just try to follow this tutorial verbatim and just copy everything that you see in this video. Maybe start with that, but just add your own magic to it. Maybe use a scene with 2 different windows, maybe change some of the objects that we have in this scene, maybe decorate it differently, use different objects for the lighting, maybe change the chandelier, maybe create another decorative light, and just try to make it your own, okay? So instead of just copying everything you see in this video, make sure that you kind of change it, and you should do that with all of the scenes that we've covered in this workshop. And that's always the best way to make sure that you've mastered the techniques that you've learned in this workshop, okay? So in the next couple of videos, we're going to work on another scene using a completely different theme, this time focusing on having some kind of sunlight inside the interior scene that we're working on. And I will see you guys there.